Big Rab Show Podcast is kindly sponsored by G1 Reeds. They are the champion's choice, with many bands around the world playing G1 products, providing everything you'd need to hit the circle or the big stage. So, check out g1reeds.com as they keep the lights on here at the Big Rab Show Podcast. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another Big Rab Show podcast. Well, this is not the episode that we had planned for this week, and we'll talk more about that. There's a reason why you're listening to my voice in my recording studio right now. We'll get into all of that. But first of all, let's do your introductions then, shall we? Well, if this is your first ever Big Rab Show podcast, then you are welcome. We are the show for the bagpiping folk, reflecting everything in the bagpiping world, be it Celtic music, folk music, or indeed our bread and butter, which is competitive piping and drumming. Each and every week we're here talking about what we know and love to be the music of the Great Highland Bagpipe and its people. And yes, there has never been a better time to go and help support our show over there on Patreon. Can I tell you, the amount of stuff that is back there on Patreon is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous. We have literally hours and hours worth of video all up there now on Patreon from day one of the World Championships, and we're nowhere near done. We're about to get into day two, and the amount of extras that we're churning out over there on Patreon is kind of ridiculous. So, if you do want to go and check all of those out over there on Patreon, go for it. Go in there now, go and click on support, and you get your mitts on all of those extras. And I have to say, one of the biggest ones that we've released is a video diary that I produced on day one of the World Championships. We talked about it last week, actually, that I was filming all over the place. And we filmed a bit of a video diary. And it's about an hour and a half long. It's like a full-length movie. It's fantastic. So it took forever to edit and get it all put together and have it make sense. That's up there now on Patreon, exclusive for our Patreon faithful. So if you do want to go and check that out, then go and have a look at your show notes right now. Click on that link and be part of the Patreon faithful. Now, normally, at this point in the show, we would normally open the door to listener mail, bigrabshow@gmail.com. That email address again, bigrabshow@gmail.com. And we would do listener mail, and we would do weekly drone. But this, as I've said, is not the episode that we had scheduled for this week. If anything, this week, episode 398 was supposed to be a full, on-the-ground report from the World Championships on day one. Yeah, you were supposed to get a full, big podcast of me running around Glasgow Green, surrounded by amazing music on the Friday of the World Championships. However, I'm sure you know why now at this point, why I'm talking to you instead of being surrounded by musics. I'm now sitting here in my garage having to address some of the issues that has fallen out from the World Championships as a result. Now, last week we did briefly touch on this. We did talk about everything that happened with Novice Juvenile B and the reading out of the incorrect results and everything. But at that time, it was very much a changing story. Pretty much as we were recording it, things were getting released and news stories were breaking and we just couldn't keep up with it, really. So, we mentioned it, that it had happened, and we were in a state of flux last week. But right now, we definitely have some more concrete stuff to talk about, and we need to unpack every single pick of it, because the World Championships this year is not without its fair share of controversy. However, there's a lot of positive to talk about from the Worlds. And if you do want to hear all of that, of course, our full wrap-up of the World Championships was last week. If you didn't get a listen to that, shout out to the Big Rab Show team who managed to join us. And that was such a smashing episode, so go and check that out. Last week's episode was a cracker. As for this one, yes, to those of you who are going to be disappointed that you're not going to get your full on-the-ground report this week, then bear with us. The bagpiping world is kind of, it's reeling right now. I think that's the only way I would describe it. Pardon the pun. Licking her wounds, I think. The bagpiping world has seen some very historical moments. And, we need to unpack all of it. And yes, we also need to catch up with all of our listener mail and weekly drone, and we've decided we're going to dedicate a full episode catching up on everything post-Worlds. Now, don't worry. For those of you that were looking forward to your on-the-ground reports and stuff, then, yeah, we will have that. That is to come, all right? So we haven't kicked all of that content into the trash can. That will be released possibly next week, we think. Yeah, so World's on-the-ground report day 1 will be next week, all right? So there you go. So your normal scheduled programming will be resumed next week. But for now, we have a special news bulletin to bring you. That kind of thing. So, yeah, here, folks, I have to tell you, the amount of listener mail and weekly drones that we've received since the World Championships has been insane, and we have not been able to keep up with all of it. So if you did manage to send us in listener mail, or you've sent us a weekly drone, then yeah, we just cannot include all of them, folks. There's just been way too many. So I think at this point, we're going to do our best to try and catch up. Hence the title of this week's episode. We're going to do our best. Yeah, I think at this point, I'm going to take myself a little break, and I'll be right back, of course, with all of those weekly drones. Do you wish piping could be fun again? Bagpipers around the world continue to struggle with their instrument, despite hours of hard work trying to get better. Bagpiping should be fulfilling. Your hard work should pay off, showing improvement and the freedom to express yourself musically. Or why do it? The Dojo University believe every piper should be able to free themselves from musical frustration, proven over more than a decade of successful teaching and accessible anywhere with an internet connection. The Dojo is unlike any other bagpipe learning experience in the world. Let the Dojo channel your enthusiasm into a fun and fulfilling program that will empower you with the knowledge to fall in love with piping all over again. So go to dojouniversity.com/Big Rab and take advantage of our 30-day free trial of Dojo Premium membership. Join the global community of students today and rediscover the fun of bagpiping. dojouniversity.com/Big Rab for a 30-day free trial. Ready to take your playing to the next level? Say hello to the ES Session Chanter, the ultimate practice chanter designed for versatility and durability. Crafted from stainless steel and aluminium, the chanter comes equipped for both an A stem and a B flat stem, giving you the freedom to play along with any instrument, anytime, anywhere. Whether at a band practice or a trad session, the ES Session Chanter keeps pace with your creativity. Included with the chanter is the custom carbon carry case, the perfect addition to this compact and tactile instrument. To get yours, head to essessionchanter.co.uk. And we're back. Now, I have to say, we're about to get into an absolute mountain of listener mail and weekly drones. There's just, I don't know even where to start with these. There's so many. And I think that's a testament to the World Championships themselves. There's been so much commentary, both good and bad, and yeah, some of it really concerning. Now, for us here in the Rab Show, it's the really concerning stuff that we want to talk about. Obviously, people had their usual complaints, about the security staff that we all moaned about last week on the podcast, but also people were moaning about the price of tickets, the price of food and beer, and basically everything that we talked about on last week's podcast. So hopefully your emails and all of your concerns that you raised and listener mail were definitely addressed in last week's episode. So if you do want to hear all of that, then definitely consider going over there and having a listen to last week's. Now, as for this week's show, as we've said, we're going to be delving into the quite concerning areas. A lot of correspondence has been received by ourselves here on the Big Rab Show, all talking about the Novice Juvenile B disaster. Now, that's the only way we can really call it a disaster. For those of you who don't know, of course, don't know where you've been, but this has been all across the bagpiping world since it happened. On the Saturday evening at the World Pipe Band Championships, the wrong winners were read out for Novice Juvenile B. There was some sort of an administrative mix-up, and long story short, the playing order on the day had changed. This was not marked on the sheets correctly, though, by the judges. It wasn't spot-checked by the directors who were managing the arena. It then went to the people who tabulate all the results and everything, and that wasn't done correctly, and the whole thing was just a giant mess. And then whenever this situation was realised, going, hold on, those are all wrong. They're all incorrect. Your playing orders are incorrect, so the wrong sheets have been given to the wrong bands, and then we have what we have. All of last week, we had notifications and press statements and Zoom meetings aplenty, and we've got a lot to get into with Novice Juvenile B. We will get into all of that, of course, later on in the show, just because we really want to treat it as a full topic of the week here. There's a lot of nuance with all of this, and we really think that we are now going to see a drastic change in our competitive piping world. Now, this drastic change is being driven by the bands themselves. And this is what makes this incredibly interesting, and one of which that we really need to dedicate a lot of time to. So hence the reason we're doing some Worlds Catch-Up. We will talk about the Novice Juvenile B situation. Don't think for a second that we're going to ignore it. We will be talking about that later in the show. All right, so let's get into some weekly drones then, shall we? Before we do delve into all of those murky waters of the Novice Juvenile B situation. Right, we've got a dose of these weekly drones to get through, so let's start with the first one then, JD. Yeah, give us this week's first weekly drone, please.
It's the weekly drone. Bass drum heads? Please, let's have a competition on that. I agree with Inverary and District.
JD, I don't know if JD was on the beer, or perhaps whoever it was who sent in that weekly drone, maybe they were on the beer. But, okay, there's two things there. Bass drum heads. Yes, we do have a Big Rab Show award for coolest bass drum. Yeah, so that's kind of a competition for bass drum heads, I guess. Yeah, so I don't know, competitive bass drum heads, I don't know, the closest thing we're ever going to get to that, I think, is the Big Rab Show awards. So do keep that in mind, I guess. So yeah, that already kind of exists, Weekly Droner. And you agree with Inverary? Yes, and so do the judges. And yeah, we did talk all about that last week. They were definitely deserved champions. Were the most consistently brilliant over the course of the weekend. I have to agree, absolutely. All right, okay, that was a very random weekly drone to start on, JD. Have you got anything a little bit more meaty for us to get our teeth into?
It's the weekly drone. Hello, weekly drone. In episode 394, our dear host was reading out the results of the contest that had happened the weekend prior. Dumbarton, I believe. But he kept pairing up drumming and ensemble results as if they somehow and inextricably go hand in hand. It seems to me that pairing up drumming and ensemble results is as ludicrous as pairing up piping and ensemble results. I think Rab should have a look at what the esoteric intangible known as ensemble is all about. Quote, in a pipe band context, however, ensemble is defined by the RSPBA in its Structured Learning Book 3 in a broader context as the coming together of the component parts to establish a complete entity. A good ensemble is the combination of well-matched and balanced components that successfully produce a pleasing, harmonious effect. End quote. I think it is important to recognize and realize that both cores have a role to play in pleasing the ensemble judge. Love the show, Rab, don't get me wrong, but these massive results reading shows can be just a wee bit dry, and it took all that ensemble talk to set me off, as it were. All the best. Cheers.
Oh, Weekly Droner. Yes. Do you know what? I think I will take my licks on that one. Yeah, I think you're spot on. As I was at the World Championships, actually, over the course of that weekend, a number of people actually spoke to me about this, about me talking about ensemble judging and how I was comparing the drumming results to the ensemble results. But what I should have been doing also is looking at the piping as well, because ensemble judging is the kind of go-between between both sections. So yes, you're absolutely spot on, Weekly Droner. Can't agree more. Yeah, so I was completely wrong. I always thought that if you had good drumming, you had good ensemble. But that's not always the case. You also need good piping. But I guess whenever we're going through some of the results and we are reading out those results shows, as you mentioned, we do kind of get a little analytical when we look at the piping, for example. You know, we're seeing firsts and seconds and thirds. And in drumming, we're seeing first, second, thirds in drumming. And then in ensemble, we're seeing 14ths, 15ths, 16ths. And that's left us scratching our head, going, hold on, how come both units separately can place high and their ensemble can be low? So, yes, we will definitely take your suggestion. We have been talking about this all season, that ensemble seems to be that intangible X factor that nobody really seems to grasp, really. So is it an average score between the piping and the drumming, a combination of both, or is it just that X factor? Is it that one judge that you need to impress on the day? And if you don't do it, you don't do it, regardless if you have a clinker of a run or if you play like a bag of bottles. Yeah, so we will definitely be delving into the world of ensemble. We will be talking to ensemble judges, hopefully, here on the show. We've invited a number of them now following all of this conversation, and we do hope to delve a little bit more deeply into the world of ensemble. What is it? I think we've talked about it before here on the show, but we never really fully unpacked it in a way that it made sense, I guess. Yeah, at that time, I think we just put it down to, well, one judge's treasures, another judge's trash, I guess. And that's just it. We're competing at competitive art, you know? So, yes, we do hope to make it a little bit more tangible, a little bit more understandable. And we are working on a future show to talk all about ensemble and ensemble judging, for that matter. So, yes, thank you, Weekly Droner. Also your comments about the results shows being a bit dry. Yes, I get that. I understand that completely. But that is us kind of getting a little bit nerdy with it, I guess. Going through those summary sheets and just, delving through all of that. Who won what and where and why. And, I don't know. That's our bread and butter, I suppose. But if you don't like results shows, we can't please everyone. There are those out there that absolutely love them and like to hear their name shouted out each week when they win a prize, I guess. But, we can't please everyone. And I guess we haven't pleased that Weekly Drone there, unfortunately. There you are. But some very good, relevant points there, I think, on ensemble. And we will be delving into that in future shows. Thank you, Weekly Droner. All right, let's move on. JD, what's the next one?
It's the Weekly Drone.
World Qualifiers results. It seemed on Saturday, none of the RSPBA stewards knew what was the format for announcing the bands that had qualified through to the final competitions. Many stewards were telling bands totally different information, which meant nobody knew where to go to find out. Was it in the arena the final was being held? Or was it at the Needle? A board went up at the Needle later in the day, stating where the results would be announced at the arenas and at what time. Yet all the boards were put on display at the Needle 10 minutes or so before the information previously given and at the arena. This was devastating for the bands who did qualify, who couldn't celebrate all together at the Needle like they used to do when it was announced and shown on a big screen. Also, why were the qualifier results only announced 45 minutes before the finals started? Ridiculous notice for the bands at the start of the competition, giving them no time at all to compose themselves and prepare for the final competition.
Weekly Droner. Yes, I think you are absolutely spot on the money there. Yeah, there was a lot of confusion on the day with where the actual qualifications will be announced. We spoke about that last week, where we did say that we seen stewards actually running around the park with whiteboards under their arms, sprinting, in fact. I do remember seeing one steward who just was absolutely pelting it from one end of the arena through to the other. And I think at the end of it, those whiteboards were just all collected. And instead of being ran around everywhere, they just were collected and placed at the big spiky thing. Yeah, Nelson's column. Nelson's monument, or whatever you call that big thing. That's where they all eventually landed. And after all of the confusion, and there was a lot of it, I have to say, and yes, we did hear reports of some misinformation being dealt out there saying, oh, you have to stand at this arena and you'll find out. People did go there, they went and they stood, there was no announcement. Then they got a phone call from their PM saying, hey, where are you? I'm standing here at the Needle and just the results are in. Yes, there was a lot of confusion, and it did lose that moment, didn't it? Whenever normally we would have had this massive big screen, and then all of the qualifying results were displayed on that screen. And that's a very cool moment for any band, to see your name up in lights like that. Not only have you qualified for the world's final, which is a big deal, and you get that moment, celebrating with your bandmates, but you also get to have your name displayed right across the park. Like, that screen is huge, and you'd be able to see that from the main entrance. It was absolutely massive, and a big moment for all pipe bands who were involved in qualification circumstances. And they've done away with that big screen now for quite a number of years. And please bring it back, RSPBA. That was such a cool thing to do for bands. If you've qualified, then to have your name shown up there on a big screen and lights like that. Yeah, it was very cool. And if anything, I do remember one year in particular where I was standing at the Needle at the big screen waiting to see the results for the qualifying for Grade 4A, I think it was. And the crowd started to count down. We're like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then suddenly the screen did change when everybody reached 0. It was such a cool moment. Some people were frantically reading through the list to look for their band's name. When they found it, woo! They all went nuts. And it, it was a big deal. But we didn't get that this year, or previous years, where we've been looking at scribbled whiteboards, which is not the most glamorous way to do it, I guess, and not the most dramatic either. Yeah, but there you go. It is what it is. 2024, we're left with a whiteboard and a marker and confusion with stewards running around arenas. So, yes, completely agree. Now, also, to get on to your next point then, I guess, the timing. Yes, the timing for the announcements of the qualifications. Yeah, it really did leave it down to the very last moment. And I did hear some bands, in fact, saying by the time they got everybody gathered together, pipes out of the box, drums out of the cases, and everybody said, right, we need to get ready. They had about 20 minutes left. They had 30 minutes tops. And yeah, that was incredibly stressful for those bands involved to go from everything sitting in pipe boxes and everything packed away to, oh my word, we have to play again. And in some cases, some people actually got changed out of uniform. I've seen that happen as well. There were some people who were frantically putting the kilts back on again, thinking that they had no chance and that they didn't qualify. And then suddenly, whammo, you're having to step back in and play an MSR. What are you doing? So, yes, the timings were a massive deal. But I have to say that was the story across the park. As they were getting ready for the grand finale with the march past and everything, Grade 3A was still happening. Grade 3A final went on well past 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were still competing as, the centre bands were starting to gather up and everything. So, yes, we know the march past takes a seriously long time, but also the competition itself takes a seriously long time. So, I don't know. Perhaps it's something to do with the number of competitors, I guess, on the number of available arenas. I don't know. It's a difficult one, that. Timing of everything can be really difficult to plan. But, yeah, did they get it right this year? I don't know. Especially when you consider when they announce the people who've qualified and then you have literally 45 to half an hour to get ready. And in some cases, in some bands, that might not be enough time to find that tone that you're looking for in Glasgow Green. So, yeah, definitely one to consider going forward, the qualifying results. Yeah, that was an interesting one, Weekly Droner. Thank you for that. Right, JD, have we got any more?
It's the weekly drone.
World's results shambles. I just knew, when the results from the Worlds took so long to be published that something had gone wrong. Again. And I hate being right about this, but I was right. It makes me wonder, how many other years did the World's results get published, but errors were either not detected or, to avoid embarrassment on the part of the RSPBA, ignored?
Oh, Weekly Droner, what are you doing there? You're getting a big spoon and stirring it up there, aren't you? As if things aren't bad enough as it is. But yeah, it's a fair point. A lot of people were contacting us on the Rab Show. That was a good lot of our listener mail, actually, that we received. After the World Championships wrapped up and the live stream killed the cameras, and that was it. It was game over for the Worlds. Then our emails started. My phone just started pinging all the time. Rab, where's the results? Why aren't they published yet? Where are they? And my answer was, I don't know. They haven't been published yet. They're not up on the site. And a few days later, they still hadn't been published yet. Well, now in hindsight, I guess, being perfectly 2020, we do now know exactly why they were delayed in being published. And as our weekly droner has said, that as soon as you experience a delay in publishing your results in black and white, then that doesn't bode well, does it? We have experienced that in the past with other majors and with other world championships for that matter, where, there's been a delay in publishing the results online. And we now know why, that there's possible errors involved. So yes, Weekly Droner, you can be very smug in the knowledge that you were right, that there was a mistake made in the world's results, which is never pleasant. And we are where we are now. We're going to get into everything with the Novice Juvenile B. So that's one very smug Weekly Droner right there. I was right. But if you ever do see that delay after a major championship, it does make you worry, doesn't it? Because we have experienced this so many times before. Like, so many times. We've spoken about this on the Rab Show before, that we very rarely talk about the results of any competition until they're published. We know what's announced in the park is one thing, but we now also know that, we don't talk about it until it's actually in black and white in front of us. And for that very good reason. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? JD, come on, give us another weekly drone.
It's the weekly drone.
Worlds march past. Over 3 hours from start to finish. You can fly to Spain quicker. Crowds leaving, bands leaving. This is not what folks want to see. Why not announce the winners and get the prize winners to march past?
Oh, Weekly Droner, we're on the topic of the march past. I have to say, as being a member of the public or a member of the press, then having to stand there for that 3.5 hours, I think it was total, that was awful. But I don't even know what it would be like to stand in there as a centre band or even as a band marching in there. That was seriously long, and for many different reasons. March pasts has been a topic of the show here all season. We've been talking about it all year, about different methods. How can we fix it? How can we get it to go better, faster? And, how can we dish out the prizes and then move on and get everybody home? It's been a huge topic for discussion here on the show, and there are many different possibilities of ways of doing things. Ourselves here in Northern Ireland, we've actually followed the American model for a few competitions, and it's worked very well, where all bands in competition form like one giant mass band. Everybody plays Scotland the Brave or something. I don't know who picks the tune, but we all just march on in mass, and that's it, done. Like 10 minutes. I think the longest time is spent gathering everybody together. Now, will that work for the Worlds? No. There's way too many bands involved. that just wouldn't be possible, I think. Yeah, logistically. And yeah, is there a clear solution for the March Past? I don't know, but I think they could definitely do a lot to help themselves. And yeah, I think we have another weekly droner here on the March Past situation because, yeah, the length of time it took, 3.5 hours, even longer, I think in some cases by some people's watches. Yeah, it's far too long. Completely agree. So let's get into this next weekly drone. We'll break this topic down a bit.
It's the weekly drone.
The world's March Past. The time it takes to do the March Past and announcements is far too long. Not only is it such a long day for bands who are competing in the morning, it's ridiculous that the center bands are playing for so long. This needs to be revisited, and they need to come up with a better, shorter version. They need to put a survey out to all the bands and ask for opinions. Jackie Bird also needs to learn her lines. She kept everyone waiting.
Oh, weekly droner, you had to go there. Jackie Bird and the BBC. Now, we'll talk about that in a second. But yes, just echoing exactly what I said, it does take way too long. And yeah, I do feel really sorry for those centre bands that are having to stand there for the duration and thump out those 6/8s for everybody. That is a seriously long time to play. And I have to say, that is a game of endurance in itself. So I just don't know. This year's March Past took way too long. And yeah, it's a testament to all of the bands who managed to make it happen, I guess. Now, our previous weekly droner, they touched on something that we didn't address there. They were talking about people leaving, and bands were leaving throughout. And yeah, I absolutely witnessed this firsthand. I know a lot of people who were around me, and as soon as they heard the drum majoring results, they left. And yeah, I noticed a lot of people who were up in the stands at the Grade 1 Arena who were getting their seats and everything. And as soon as the Salute to the Chieftain was played, they left. That was it. They didn't hang around for the results. Just, bye, see you, and get my taxi, cheerio. And a good number of those seats at the Grade 1 Arena were empty by the time they were reading out the results for Grade 4A. So yeah, I have actually made notes on that. And yeah, the park itself, as each grade was announced and each band celebrated their victory, a good amount of bands in that grade, yeah, just snuck out the back and left. And there is a video of the full thing up on YouTube. I have to give a shout out to Aaron McElwain, who did manage to present all of that on his YouTube channel. You can go and watch the full March Past and the prize giving, as well as the marching out as well. So it's very cool to be able to watch that back. So thank you, Aaron. But yeah, go and have a watch at it. It does make for some interesting interesting viewing because of how it progresses. You do see at the very beginning of the March Past, the place is absolutely packed and it's rammed with bands, and it looks really impressive. And then towards the end, you actually hear Colin Mulhern going, can everybody please hang around? Because Inverari's going to march out and everything after he does his TV thing. Can you hang on a wee bit? You can actually see that in the video. So, yeah, it happens. A lot of people were just like, here, look at the time. I'm going to go and get myself a feed and a shower and, yeah, head out on the night. You know what I mean? Enjoy my Saturday night in Glasgow. But, yeah, it did. It went on way too long. So, as to the possible solution, no idea. But yes, you mentioned Jackie Bird and the BBC. Yeah, for those of you who did watch the live stream online, you may well have witnessed it. Now, the BBC television programme that it was on actually just this past week, and it was really, really cool. And that introduction from Jackie Bird, welcome to the 2024 World Pipe Band Championships, and everybody behind her goes, yoo-hoo, whoopee, whoopee, right? That bit there, that introduction that Jackie filmed with all of the bands, that took ages. That took forever. Now, there was a wee woman there with an umbrella whose job it was to make sure that no rain hit Jackie Bird. There was also a lighting guy who was running around with a huge big torch light thing. There was half a dozen cameramen as well. They were all whistling around the place and they were all talking to each other on walkie-talkies and stuff. And then Jackie kind of joked around with the crowd and said, hang on, and, if I manage to mess up my line, and, I'll buy you all a drink, and right, come on, get on with it. Anyway, this it took forever. And then Jackie dipped into her pocket to get a scrap of paper with her lines written on it, and then it seemed to be that she got the wrong scrap of paper and had to go and dig for another one, and then her umbrella girl cleared off, and then she had to come back again because it was raining, and, oh, man. The entire thing is up there now on Aaron McElwain's video of the March Past. The full thing is up there, warts and all, with no fancy cuts or anything. But filming that whole process, that whole fancy introduction, now, don't get me wrong, it looks amazing. Whenever you see that on the telly, and it, cinema magic, I guess, it just looked absolutely brilliant. But that whole process of putting that together, yikes, that had everybody standing there for the guts of 20 minutes, half an hour. Everyone was like standing around waiting for the lighting guy to get his light 100% perfect. And then, I don't know, it was a process. That's all I'll say. It was a process. So can they make that process a bit better? I guess they could. I don't know. I don't make TV shows. I make podcasts. I have no idea. The amount of work and coordination that goes into that, and it's bound to be like herding cats. It's bound to be crazy. So anyway, for those of you who did catch the BBC show, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about with that huge introduction at the start. It's very impressive. It's definitely a great introduction to the show, where you have every pipe band person on that park going, "Yo, go on, Jackie!" Yeah. It's very cool. But that did take forever to put together, and that did slow things down. Well, right. Also, I have to say about the prize giving as well, there was a power cut as well. Now, those people who were watching on the live stream, that'll be why the cameras died. A lot of people were complaining, going, where'd the live stream go? Well, that's what happened. There was a power cut at the venue. That everything went. All the lights, the cameras, everything just went down. And, we heard on the mic saying, we're experiencing a power outage right now. We're trying to get it back up and running, and we'll get back into the juvenile grade. I think they were at that point. Or was it earlier than that? I can't remember now. But there was a power cut. And again, that took about 15 minutes to fix. And everyone just had to kind of stand around and wait till they got the cameras back on again. I think at one point then, I think they just went for it and just, look, we can't wait any longer. We're just going to go start reading results, and hopefully they'll switch their cameras back on. So I think the people in the park may well have heard some results that weren't on the live stream. I don't know. That could be stuff that Rab got wrong. Anyway, so you can email me in about that. But yeah, the whole, coverage thing, the BBC, the cameras, all of the production and everything that goes in, it is very slick whenever it works, and it looks amazing. But whenever it goes wrong, it can really slow things down, I guess. So anyway, is that something we can learn lessons for next year? I guess, possibly. But there you go. I am not part of that production crew. I don't know the amount of work that goes into that. Yeah, shout out to all of them who really dealt with a lot of rubbish that weekend, dealing with power cuts, technical problems, everything. There you go. All right, let's move on. JD. Enough talking about March Pasts. I don't think we're completely out of the woods with this March Past topic, by the way. I'm sure there's bound to be a future Big Rab Show podcast where we're going to have to talk all about March Pasts. Yeah. So if you do have an opinion, of course, on how we can do these better, then email us, bigrabshow@gmail.com, or you can send us in your own weekly drone. How do you think we should do the March Past better? Yeah, how could we speed things up and get it, done by a reasonable time so we're not all standing there under floodlights? Anyway, let's move on. Next weekly drone then, JD.
It's the weekly drone. Adjudicators, could you please? We pipers and drummers put in ridiculous amounts of time and effort to step into the circle every year. We spend hours upon days upon weeks and months trying to perfect our MSRs and medleys, our tone, our tempos, our snare scores and midsection sound, to be able to give our best show in the circle. Occasionally, these efforts lead to a trophy or medal, but for most of us, our reward is the great feeling of having given it our best go, and crit sheets. Once the pipey has that envelope in his hands, everyone wants to know what the judges thought of our play. Some judges have beautiful handwriting that's easy to read. Others, less so. A few judges write so illegibly, only a pharmacist could read their scrawled chicken scratches. Adjudicators, for the love of God, could you please write legibly? If we can't make heads or tails of what's written down, how can we possibly apply any of it?
Ooh, there's a weekly droner who's quite sore, I think, after getting some crit sheets from the Worlds and not being able to read them. And yes, I love that comment there about only a pharmacist could read that. Maybe, dude, take your drumming sheet or piping sheet, whatever, take it into your local pharmacy and see if they can decipher it for you. There you go. I'm joking, of course. But yeah, that is a problem. And we have spoke about that in previous Rab shows. That's been my experience as well as being a lead tipper back in the day. That, sometimes you get drumming sheets and you just can't read them. And you're like, what does that say? And you don't want to be that person either that would contact the judge and say, here, what have you written here? What is that? What are you talking about? You don't want to be that person. Because, for multiple different reasons. But, I have to say that I do know that is part of the training, actually, for judges, to make sure that not only what they write should make sense, but also that it is legible. Yeah, there are spot checks done on judging crit sheets, and I don't know just how this all works, but I do know that there is spot checks carried out on crit sheets of judges, and if they do spot a crit sheet that isn't exactly legible, or doesn't make any sort of sense or anything like that, then that judge could be recommended. Here, you might need to touch up on your possible training here. There might be an aspect that we need to look at. I have to say, though, sometimes judges are judging bands in all conditions. I have received some crit sheets from judges that have been absolutely written in the rain in pencil, and they're just absolutely, you cannot read anything on them. Because they're writing your sheet in the pelting rain. So, I don't know. It's one of these things. Judges do their very best, I have to say. Everyone that's in there with a clipboard has a huge role of responsibility, and they're aware of that fact. And, whenever they are writing on their judging sheets, they're really trying to help the band, the drum major, whoever they have in front of them. They're really trying to help. They're writing stuff down on that sheet to say, right, this went well, that went well, this not so good, you need to work on that, watch the break here, a little slip here. They're making notes as they go along, as they hear it. And, that's really difficult to do whenever you have one opportunity to listen, you have one opportunity to write it down as it happens, and then you have to hand it over. It's not as if you can go back over it and change your spelling or make sure that word, you can actually read it. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say, as much as us as bands folk, whenever we get our sheets at the end of it and we pour over it with a magnifying glass and we have hours to do so, the judge who wrote that sheet might only have had that 5 or 7 minutes to, summarize their thoughts on one sheet. So do keep that in mind. It is not the easiest job in the world, I have to say. So, but here, shout out to our weekly droner for being completely honest and saying, hey, come on, watch about the handwriting there, judges. Oh, dear. But, I am definitely running to the defense of the judges. It's not an easy task. All right, let's move on. JD, I think I'm pretty much about droned out at this point. I think we do have some more weekly drones, but I'm going to wrap it up with one more. I don't know about you folks, but that you get kind of tired of hearing that theme tune, don't you? I love hearing JD's voice, though, but whenever you hear that that music, you go, come on, another weekly drone? Come on, JD, lay us on us. This is the last weekly drone for this week.
It's the weekly drone. If you have integrity, nothing else matters. It was Maya Angelou who said, "People will never forget how you made them feel." Last weekend, like every weekend, bands and drum majors across every grade and age group made people feel the music, moving them emotionally right to their very souls. delivering a level of skill and entertainment that we've no right to expect from people enjoying their hobby. All through the year, not only have people practiced at home and in band halls, they've baked cakes, washed cars, run marathons, hosted quizzes, played at concerts, scrimped, saved, maxed out credit cards, used up leave, given up family time, and a whole lot more besides, to perform at local contests and major championships in the hope of leaving their best out on the field and perhaps picking up a tin pot or two along the way. What makes it all the more remarkable is that many will have done so full in the knowledge that they are actually wasting their time and money. From the moment the panels were released in the spring, people will have been looking at who was judging what, and accepting that at this contest or that contest, it wouldn't matter if you stood on your head, had fireworks coming out of your drones, actually played the run of your life, or just turned your band to face the crowd. You were getting nothing, or at least not getting what you deserved. Whether you had been doing well all year or all weekend, it wouldn't matter. All it would take was one judge out of the 4, or 16, to put you somewhere, anywhere from 5th down, and the game would be up. People aren't stupid. They know a good run when they hear it, or play in it, and they know when a judge has unfairly stitched up a band. For too long, bandsfolk have put up with pernicious agendas robbing them of what was rightfully theirs for fear of speaking out and seeing results on the field being negatively impacted, with the result that the results on the field continue to be negatively impacted. And now, compilers are at it too. Enough is enough. So in closing, to quote former U.S. Senator Alan K. Simpson, "If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters." The classic quote of two halves. Bandsfolk, you have integrity. Nothing else matters. Washington Street types? Well, I'll let you work out which bit of the quote relates to you.
Ooh, ouch. Wow. Now that was a weekly droner and a half to finish on right there. Woo! Weekly droner, what are you doing to me? Are you trying to get me cancelled? Yeah. I have to say some of my favourite performances from World Championships, not just this year, but in quite a number of other years. Some of my favourite runs are from bands that hadn't lifted a prize. Yeah, sometimes there's been some performances in all grades, not just grade 1, but there's bands that absolutely thump it out of the park and just don't feature in that top 6 position. Now, that's just, again, it's my opinion. I am not a judge. I am not in there with that clipboard. I've mentioned this many times before, but I do get what you're saying. We've spoke about this on the Rab Show before, about whenever those judging panel lists get announced in the early spring and everyone knows who's going to be judging what competition, bands do plan their repertoire accordingly as to who's going to be standing there with a clipboard listening to them. They do get a feeling for what that judge might be listening for. Are they more traditional in their musical choice, or would they be more open to a lot more adventurous kind of music that's in the circle? Or in some cases, does it even matter? There is that debate, and we've been talking about that here on the show for a good while now. There have been bands all across the grades, not just the top flight, but in all grades that can absolutely thump out a blistering tune and just not feature in the prize list. Now, for whatever reason, we don't know. Now, we did have our weekly droner there saying that there was pernicious agendas, I think was the word that they used. We can neither confirm nor deny that is the case, but we've spoke about that way earlier on the podcast when we were talking about judges, and we were talking about judging in general and whether agendas were a thing. And I don't know. We were never really able to kind of chip our way through that iceberg, I guess. We kind of got to the tip of it and said, this is how judging works, this is what we're looking for. But how does it really work? And what are they really looking for? Yeah, as we're going to be delving into future Big Rab shows, I guess this is something we can unpack, I guess. But, when we're looking at things such as ensemble judging, why not unpack a little bit more with drumming and piping? The other areas. And, of course, even for drum majoring as well. What is a drum majoring judge looking for? I've learned a lot about piping and drumming through doing this podcast over the years. And, there are still a lot of things in this piping world that are absolutely a mystery to me. And if I can learn that along with you guys, then why not? But, Weekly Droner, you mentioned a word there that I think is going to carry through into this week's topic of the week. You've mentioned integrity. You mentioned it quite a few times throughout that weekly drone, and that quote that you had at the very end there, nothing else matters. Yeah, we're about to get into all of that. Do our band's people have integrity? Absolutely. I agree. They do, 100%. Everyone who was on that grass in Glasgow that weekend gave their A game. They gave it all. And as you said, they've spent so much money to be there, time, effort, time away from family, hotels, work, all of that kind of stuff. All to play a big tune on the park in the hope to win a prize. And, bands folk definitely have integrity from that pursuit. Whether the folks in Washington Street and headquarters... anyway... I don't know. I think they have a battle on their hands, I guess. And we're about to get into that battle right now and talk about everything that happened in Novice Juvenile B. This is a huge subject area, and that's why we're dealing with it all under a full topic. So we're going to get into that. But I figured that's a good weekly drone to end with there. And, integrity being the word of the day right there. Do you remember when we used to do that, word of the week? Anyway, so JD, I have to say a huge thank you to JD for this week. What a legend. He managed to record all of those weekly drones for us this week. There are others that just have hit the cutting room floor, unfortunately. But yeah, shout out to JD, who's put in a wealth of work putting all of those weekly drones for us together. Yeah, thank you. And to everyone who has sent us in some listener mail, we will delve into some of that as it does feed into our topic, I guess. So we will get into that. So listener mail, bigrabshow@gmail.com. Or if you do want to send us in your own weekly drone, as you just heard, they're all anonymous. There's no names. There's no identifying factors at all. So we've no clue who sent these in to us. You can go to our website, thebigrabshow.com. There's a big button right at the top of the page that says weekly drone. Click on that and, you get access to our weekly drone page. It's all grey and everything, and it has a couple of boxes where you can type in your story, warts and all, and we'll bring it here to the pod to discuss it. All right? So there you go. It's an open microphone to the bagpiping world, and let us know your thoughts. Weekly drone. Okay, well, I think that's enough of weekly drones for now, don't you? I think it is time for me to finally go and get myself a big cup of tea. It's time for the topic of the week.
Whether you play to entertain or perform to compete, it's not always easy to find the highest quality instruments and accessories that hold the keys to success from a single source. That's why pipers and drummers everywhere rely on Scott Curry Music as their one-stop pipe band shop. We supply only the world's finest bagpipe brands, including Duncan McRae, McCallum, R.G. Hardy & Company, Peter Henderson, R.T. Shepherd, Wallace Bagpipes, and not forgetting the revolutionary Blair Digital Chanter. Scott Curry Music is also home to many of the most sought-after pipe band percussion brands, such as Acoustic, Andante, British Drum Company, Hardcase, Jim Kilpatrick Percussion, Pearl, Tie-Fry, and many more. And remember, as the industry-leading pioneer of custom drumhead production for pipe bands, our unparalleled experience in creating professional drumhead designs is why many of the world's top performers trust Scott Curry Music to help them stand out from the crowd with stunning state-of-the-art factory-printed drumheads by Evans and Remo. With a proven history for super deals, being well-stocked, and consistently delivering fast service, it's no surprise that Scott Curry Music is the first choice for thousands of happy customers worldwide. So, what are you waiting for? Call our North Lanarkshire showroom today or visit us online at scottcurryltd.com to learn more and shop now for everything you need from Scott Curry Music, the world's local pipe band shop.
Wallace Bagpipes. Quality, pride and passion, made in Scotland. Proud bagpipe supplier to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Visit wallacebagpipes.com for more information or contact your nearest dealer. Alright, let's get into this. Everything to do with the Novice Juvenile B disaster at the World Pipe Band Championships 2024. Yeah, for those of you who are clued in and are plugged into the scene for the first 5 or 10 minutes of this conversation, you could possibly tune out. I'll just be bringing everyone up to speed with exactly what the heck is going on. Yeah, for all of us here living locally here in the UK, this has made national news. This has been all across the local press. A lot of the tabloids have picked this up, a lot of local papers and stuff. And even like the BBC News and everything reported this story as it dropped. And yeah, this has had an earth-shattering effect for everyone involved and for the bagpiping scene in general. And I don't overstate that fact by any means at all. Now, I have to say, this is a very emotive topic, and one of which that I have been kind of, worried about tackling because, as I've said, emotions are definitely running high on this. And I think what makes all of this really worse, I guess, is that we're talking about juvenile bands here. We're talking about schools and young kids that are competing here. And yeah, to face such an issue like this at the World Championships for people so young and so talented, it really is heartbreaking for everybody involved. So, what exactly am I talking about? What has made all of these headlines, and what has the bagpiping world talking? Yeah, let's talk about what happened, first of all, at the World Pipe Band Championships. As the march past happened, and everybody gathered to hear the results, and as they were announced in the park, everyone got to celebrate. Yo, we're all world champion, guys. And that's it, everyone marched out with their trophies and everything. However, we then found that, the results were not published online, and that started getting people scratching their heads, and you got what we got on our weekly drone earlier. Yeah, concerns started to be raised, thinking, is there a problem? Now, that in itself speaks volumes, because this is not the first time we've encountered problems like this, where the incorrect winners on the day were announced in the park. This is nothing new. And that's kind of part of the story here, that us in the bagpiping world have now kind of, in a way, come to expect this. And it has happened countless times before. And there's many different examples of this happening in recent years, not just with the World Championships, but I can name others, like the Scottish. I think it also happened at the Europeans and things like that. I think there has been other competitions where this has happened before. But this one is so profoundly felt because it is the novice juvenile bands involved here, and there's a lot of really talented young kids involved, and that's really what hit this message home, I guess. So, yes, the World Pipe Band Championships happened. The results were read out on the park as follows. In first place was Lochgilly High School Junior. In second place was the Capital District Youth Pipe Band, and they also lifted the drumming. In third place was Highland High School of Dundee. Fourth was Burnt Island. Fifth was Balerno and District Schools, and sixth was Scots College. Now, that was how it was read out on the park. And, as you can imagine, Lochgilly High School marched out of the arena celebrating their World Championship win, as did the Capital District Youth Pipe Band for lifting the drumming. And, yeah, that was game over. That was the day over for everyone. They had that opportunity to celebrate with their bandmates, and that was it, the end of the Worlds for Novice Juvenile B. Then, as I've said, there was the delay in publishing online, and everyone was scratching their heads, what's going on? Well, a couple of days after that, we all got a press statement, or a statement in general, from the board of directors of the RSPBA. Now, I'm going to read this verbatim, so you guys can get caught up with what exactly happened at that time. It said, "Dear members of Pipe Band Community Press." Now, this was sent to both ourselves at Rab Show, but also a lot of other press outlets. So, Yeah, we regret to inform you of an administrative and inputting error affecting the final of the Novice Juvenile B grade placings at the recent World Pipe Band Championships held on the 17th of August 2024 at Glasgow Green. Yeah, it came to our attention that on Saturday evening, the final placings for this particular grade were not accurately administered, and we immediately initiated a full review of the final placings and extended this review to incorporate every grade over the 2 days of competition. We now understand that the root cause of the error is as a result of facilitating a late notice request to amend the order of play and failing to ensure that all the relevant documentation was updated to reflect this change. Yikes. We fully intend on taking the necessary steps to prevent a reoccurrence of this situation at future championships. In our efforts to remedy this most regrettable situation, we have reached out to those bands directly impacted and are inviting them to participate in an online meeting to explain how this anomaly occurred. We unreservedly and sincerely apologise for the hurt, confusion, frustration and disappointment this will inevitably cause across the pipe band community as a whole. The results from the Novice Juvenile B final have now been verified and will be available on our official website once the finalists have all been spoken to. We are now in a position to publish the summaries of all other grades. As previously mentioned, these results have been thoroughly scrutinised since last Saturday evening. Yeah, so that's back then whenever this all happened. So this carries on. So we appreciate the understanding and patience of all involved as we work with the affected bands to resolve this matter swiftly and transparently. Our goal remains to uphold the highest standards of fairness and accuracy in all our events. Signed, the Board of Directors. Now, the reason why I've read that in full, because that statement is the only thing we have got here from the RSPBA. That's it. All right, that is where the line in the sand has been drawn. There has been nothing since this. Okay, so as you've seen in that statement there, they are admitting fault. They explained to us how it exactly happened. Now, they did say that this was due to a late notice request in the amendment in the order of play. Now, this is not something unusual for Novice Juvenile B. It does happen a lot, even in Novice A for that matter, where a lot of bands would kind of alter their draw and things to allow both pipe majors and, to go and play with other bands, for example, So on the day of the competition, it is agreed locally by the bands and the directors who are running that arena to say, hey, look, maybe instead of playing third today, can we possibly play 7th or 10th to allow, someone else to go and play in grade 1, for example, or grade 2, and then come back and then take our band in, that kind of thing. So this is not uncommon. It's been happening for decades, and yeah, it's normally worked quite well. However, on this occasion, all the relevant documentation was not updated to reflect this change. Now, whether this is a direct fault of the judges involved when they were, completing their judging sheets, we don't know. Whether it was the directors who were managing that arena, I believe there was 2 of them involved that day who were managing the Novice B, whether it was up to them to update all the paperwork, and we don't know. But I have to say, this went through a whole bunch of people before it even got as far as reaching the podium and the names being read out. So we don't understand how such a mistake like this, of this great magnitude, could be missed like this. So first of all, the judges had to complete their sheets. Yeah, and then we had the directors who had to collect those sheets and make sure that they're right before they're handed in to the compilers. The compilers themselves would then have to look at the sheets and then tot up all the scores and put it into your summary database thing, and then click the button and bing, it would spit out our result at the other end. Then it is spot checked again. I think there's more people then come behind that and they check it again. I think it's checked twice by the compilers before it actually does make it to the final list, and then makes it into Colin's hand to stand on the arena and announce the winner. So I don't know, that's my understanding of it. This could absolutely be stuff that Rab got wrong, but there is a huge process already in place. And yeah, as we've seen here, due to this, well, I don't know, this kind of mistake, I guess, of not triple checking the paperwork to find Was the order of play reflected in the papers as it stood on the day? The answer to that question was no. And yeah, we now have the situation we are in. So, the correct results as they should be, were completely different. Yeah. So, our world champions were Scots College, number 2 from Australia. They had 2 firsts in piping and a first in ensemble, and they came second in drumming. So, yeah, one's almost across the board. So, lifting the drumming, however, were our runner-up, were Burnt Island and District. They lifted the drumming title, and they finished second in ensemble preference. In third was Peoplesford, Boghall and Bathgate, Caledonia. Fourth was Stirling and District Schools Junior. In fifth was the High School of Dundee, and sixth was Kintyre Schools. Now, this is even such a bitter pill to swallow, because bands such as the Capital District Youth Pipe Band, who were told that they won the drumming, were found that they placed 8th overall in ensemble preference and had actually finished 3rd in drumming, not first. Lochgelly High School, who were announced on the day as world champions, found themselves in 10th place overall. So whenever you consider these bands that I'm mentioning here, these aren't adults. These are all young kids. And, you know, this is kind of what we see as the grassroots of bagpiping here. You know, competitive piping, where we should really be encouraging the youth of today to, get involved in our competitive piping and see how exciting it can be. And then things like this happen, and it can really take the wind out of their sails. Now, a lot of the online commentary and a lot of the comments flooding around social media has all been around the hurt of these young kids. And I have to agree that this, honestly, is very difficult to deal with. To be announced as world champion only for it to be snatched away in such a terrible way like this, in a Zoom call. That's awful. But also, to win a world title like this in a Zoom call, that's no way to, congratulations, you're now world champion, and, there's no bandmates around, there's no big screens, there's no cameras, there's no march past, there's nothing. You're just sitting in your room with your laptop, and you get informed over a webcam. All very strange. So what we seen after this, once the Zoom meeting took place with the bands and everything, we then started to see little announcements getting sporadically put out there on social media. Like, for example, we did see, announcements come out from Scots College, for example. We had Lochgelly High School talk about it as well. There's a wealth of other pipe bands who were involved in all of this, have all posted on their socials explaining exactly what happened and the prize that their band had won or had taken away from them. And I have to say, full credit to Lochgelly High School and the letter that was published by their principal, who really did handle this with just absolute class, I have to say. So, yeah, well done. But this is just an awful situation. No matter what way you cut the onion, it's still an onion. And it's just awful. So, looking at other sources, like pipesdrums.com has been following this story since the outset, since all of this has happened, and they have mentioned it before, that there was previous mistakes similar to this, where bands and drum majors have been read out as champion only to have that championship stripped from them, and then promises of, this will not happen again, we'll put measures in place. I think this has now happened. This could be stuff that Rab got wrong as well, but I believe this is the 3rd World Championship in a row where there has been administrative errors. And each time there has been a promise from the RSPBA. Here, we hold our hands up, we messed up, there was an administrative error, this will not happen again. And here it is again, 3rd time in a row, it has happened again. But this time, it's a real gut punch because there's all these young kids involved. It's awful. So, let's get into the current development as to what's happened. Ever since the Zoom meeting took place and the bands were spoken to and all of this unfolded, then, I don't know. There was various different rumors of what was actually said at this meeting. But I think the biggest thing that kind of confirms everything that was discussed at this is the formation of what was called a Youth Piping Working Group. Yeah. Who have now published an open letter from, they're calling themselves the Youth Initiative. Yeah. So they have published this huge open letter, which is signed by some of the biggest names in the piping game, I have to say. There's previous London gold medalists in there. There's pipe majors, of course, from Grade 1 pipe bands, but there's also world snare drumming championship winners, etc. Honestly, you can read the letter. It's all been published everywhere across social media right now, and this open letter pretty much lays it out on the table. What was said in the meeting, what was promised at the meeting, but also what this new working group are hoping to achieve by writing this huge open letter, and along with a list of hopes/demands, I guess. So this has been such an interesting development. So I'm going to read little paragraphs and stuff from this open letter, but you can go and view it yourself. Sources like pipesdrums.com have published this, but also all of those school bands that were involved in the Novice B grade, and others for that matter, have all published this letter and shared it publicly. So this is addressed to the Chief Executive Officer, Colin Mulhern, Chairman Robert Niven, and Vice Chairman Stuart Orr, all at RSPBA HQ. And it starts, "We, the representatives of bands from Novice Juvenile and Juvenile grades, request consideration by the RSPBA CEO and Board of Directors for the following proposal." All right. It goes on. It says, "On Saturday 17th, a critical mistake occurred during the Novice Juvenile B final caused by human error and a failure to comply with procedures in the verification of sensitive results-based data and the rules of the competition." Yes, it says these errors have had a profound impact on young competitors globally, leading to emotional trauma, a loss of confidence, and a loss of trust between the piping community and the RSPBA. The reputational damage to the RSPBA has played out globally on social and national media in the subsequent days. So, that's pretty much summarized everything that I just mentioned there. All right? So it has made national news. This has been a huge embarrassment for the RSPBA. And I think now what is happening with this open letter is really kind of paying more attention to this, that this is not going to go away. The lack of statements or anything being further published by the RSPBA following that big Zoom meeting, it kind of left a big gap. I'm wondering, well, what the heck happened? Is there an apology? Is there, what is going on? And there's been bupkis since then. So this letter then goes on to speak about it. It says, let me see. A large number of wider concerns were raised on the 22nd of August during the Zoom meeting on the competitive environment for young pipers and drummers, and it was acknowledged that it was the responsibility of the RSPBA Board of Directors and ultimately the CEO to address these issues. At the time of writing this letter, no minute of the meeting has been circulated, despite request. Oh! Now that little paragraph right there, that one stings, I have to say. Yeah, because I do believe that there was a request of a minute to be taken of this meeting and for it to be published publicly for members, and that hasn't happened. Ouch. If anything, nothing much has happened from RSPBA for that matter. There's been no statements, there's been no commentary on this situation from HQ at all. So I think this open letter, I'm hoping, will prompt them into action and we'll see something come from this. But as to what we are expecting, we have no idea. Yeah. So just to tell you about this independent working group on youth piping and drumming, it was established after the Zoom meeting. So this all took place on the 22nd, as I've said. Big Zoom meeting to tell everybody what exactly had happened and how everything went wrong. And then they were putting things right and telling people what the correct results were. And there was a meeting held after that. And a working group was established, which was, called the Independent Working Group on Youth Piping and Drumming. And, they met together to kind of consider some recommendations and stuff and what way they can move forward. And, this also extends to not just the Novice B, I have to say. I keep wanting to reiterate that. It's not just Novice B. There's bands involved here in Novice A and the Juvenile grade as well. And it's not just based locally here in the UK, but also on a worldwide level as well. So they did look at various different things on how to rebuild trust, how to build the youth focus, I guess, for the organization and all of this kind of stuff. So they have come forward with a list of proposed actions or recommendations, or like a big request list, really. So let's run through it, shall we? Because this, I think, is the crux of this week's conversation. Following this disaster at Novice Juvenile B, there may be something positive from this from the outset. Well, I'm hoping anyway. In this open letter, they are requesting an independent review, not to be held by the RSPBA itself, but by a professional independent body outside of headquarters to look at all of this, mess, and to give some sort of long-term vision for youth piping and drumming in the RSPBA. So, they're also wanting the results of this independent review to be published and out there in the general public. So, again, allowing for full transparency. And, they're hoping that if this review does happen, that RSPBA would action any recommendations that come from it. They're also asking that the RSPBA and its own members conduct a review and publish its own recommendations for continuous improvement on the competitive environment for youth piping and drumming. I'm sort of reading here verbatim. And they're looking that at the end of each competition season, that this working group, that would carry out such a review each season, that they would, report back to the CEO and say, hey, this is how we thought this season went, and this is how we think we can improve future seasons. Now, the third point on this letter, and this is the most interesting for me. This is a big one. The third possible recommendation or request from this independent working group has said that the RSPBA should consider an alternative formatting of the World Pipe Band Championships. Bear with me. This is to enhance the experience of youth pipers and drummers and to avoid the likelihood of a repeat of the 2024 Worlds issue. There you are. So the working group proposes that the establishment of a junior World Championships in 2025. And then they did attach an annex to this, and it details all of their proposals for what a junior World Championship would look like. Now, as I've said, this open letter absolutely is historic. I cannot stress enough how just unprecedented this is. I think the last time, looking at pipesdrums.com, they actually done a bit of research on this. They said that the last time a big open letter was published like this, it was back in the 1970s when Moorhead and Sons published one, and a bunch of pipe majors all signed it and stuff at the time, and it was to do with judging and everything. And then at that time, the RSPBA asked the band to withdraw that letter and had to apologise. Now, as to any such reaction to this open letter by RSPBA, there's been nothing. Absolutely nothing. Even ourselves here in the Big Rab Show, we have reached out to headquarters ourselves to get their side of the story on this. And, of course, we have received absolutely bupkis. Nothing. Not a sausage. So, I don't know. We can't give both sides of the story here when there's only one group of people talking, I guess, and that's the band. And that's the story that we want to present here, I have to say. So, this open letter. Folks, I can't stress enough for you to go and read this. It's about 3 or 4 pages long. It's not that big, but honestly, this could have an earth-shattering change effect in the bagpiping world, and all of it positive, I think. However, there may be some negative, if they're talking about changing the format of the World Championships. We'll have to see how that unfolds, because as we currently have it, with the Friday, Saturday being the current format of the Worlds, being the 2-day thing, Friday being all grade 1, and then Saturday being everybody else, do we have room for, further competition to happen on Friday? I guess we do. The park is big enough, and there are arenas available, so it could be possible, I guess. But will that result in the Saturday possibly losing some of its magic? Yeah. On the Saturday, it is definitely very exciting to see so many bands crammed into Glasgow Green on the big day. Saturday seen as the big occasion. It's the big day. And I have to say, a lot of the kids that I spoke to who were involved in novice competition were just so excited to be there. And they were saying, after they finished competing that day, they ran across the park and hung out at Grade 1 final tuning and got to see some of their piping and drumming heroes. So, will they potentially lose that? I don't know. So I have to say, I learn just as much from watching competitors play as actually standing in the circle and playing myself. So there is that element of it, I guess. So will you kind of take a little bit of the shine off the Saturday? Don't know. But the establishment of a youth World Pipe Band Championships, definitely very interesting. And whenever you look at their annex as well, they do talk about why this could be possibly really interesting for multiple different reasons. Number one, it reduces the need for having to reschedule draw requirements and everything. Because, not everyone's having to run across the park and play in Grade 2, Grade 1, and then run across the park and play in Novice Grade, and then back to Grade 1 again. So, yeah, that will hopefully reduce the need for that. Also, because there won't be as many bands competing, and, with just our junior bands and Grade 1 on the Friday, potentially, then that'll lessen the burden on our compilers and hopefully lessen the potential for mistakes. Also, it will draw in a lot of media attention. And this is one of the things that us in the Big Rab Show are definitely very keen on, and that's encouraging youth in piping. And having a full day dedicated to a junior world championship would honestly be brilliant. I think, it would be really smashing for a lot of young kids to hit the grass and duke it out for a world title of their very own. Like that. Yeah, but I have to say, mixing in with the rest of the big guns and doing the full march past on the Saturday, being the big day, has its own sense of magic, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't know. There's two sides to every coin with this. I do completely understand where they're coming from, though. And yeah, it's a very exciting potential here, I have to say. All right, so yeah, my advice is go and read the open letter and you can draw your own conclusions. I have no doubt we're going to get some very angry listener mail on this, bigrabshow@gmail.com, and I'm very, very happy for everyone to correct me when I'm wrong. Okay? Now, I have to say, the bitter disappointment that these young kids faced with having potential titles or championships removed from them on a Zoom call cannot be underestimated. This, honestly, has been one of the worst, occasions of this. Now, we have seen it happen before where bands have been read out incorrectly and there's tons of apologies and all the rest, and the title gets moved from one band to another. And it's sort of, it's, all right, okay, big mistakes have been made, let's move on. But in this case, because there's so much emotion tied in with this, I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon for the RSPBA folk in headquarters. So, there's a lot to unpack here. And as I've said, there is a lot of emotion tied in with all of this. So, please don't think by any stretch of the logic that I am thinking that we should just get over it and we should move on, because that's absolutely not the case. I do believe that there should be some kind of reform here. Something has to give. Now, we have had assurances from previous major championships when mistakes like this have happened that they won't happen again. And they're still happening. So something is wrong and needs to be fixed. Now, whether that's the actual administrative staff who do the compiling, whether it's the directors who are directly involved in checking all of that paperwork, or I don't know, what is it? Is it the system that we're operating? This fabled database that we put all of our results into and then click a button and it spits out a winner? Is it time to upgrade the thing? Do we need to look at our judging system? Does all of this work? Don't know. I have to say, the first time, actually, when the results were finally published online, they were published incorrectly. Yeah, did you guys spot this? Yeah, according to pipesdrums.com, who were very quick and actually caught this story. Now, we caught the story after the fact, of course, but yeah, the results were published online incorrectly due to, the machine. It wasn't totting up everything according to ensemble preference. They were telling everybody that the Grade 1 result that was read out on the park was correct, and that the Grade 1 result that was published online was incorrect. So they had to take it down, change it, and then republish it again. So, yikes. We thought that was embarrassing. Oof. Only we knew the full story. There we go. So, this system doesn't appear to be working. And we have seen multiple mistakes, not through this season, but through other seasons before us. Folks, I have to say, my heart goes out to all of the bands involved in this. All of the schools, all of the tutors, the pipe majors, lead tippers, all of the bands involved in this mess. I just cannot stress enough just how awful this is. Once you're read out as world champion, the elation that we've seen from those young kids who lifted a world title, you know yourself. If you were standing in that circle and you were told you just won the worlds, you would lose it. You would absolutely lose it. And then the opportunity then, to celebrate with your friends, your family, your bandmates. Like, a lot of these young kids were in tears and they were like really full of jubilation, and it was just fantastic to see. A big moment for that band. And for those who didn't win a title, then, hey, go and congratulate the winner, shake hands, and hey, we live to fight another day, and that's the Worlds. And then we have this. To have that world title taken away in a Zoom call, I don't know. Awful. Absolutely awful. And then for those bands to win a world title over a Zoom call, that's even worse, because you don't get that opportunity to celebrate, to march out as world champion, to puff out your chest and go, yeah, I played my best and I lifted that title. It's just horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible all round. And I don't think, no matter what way we would try to tackle this topic, I just can't convey the emotion involved here. And I think that would be driving a lot of the decisions behind all of this. I really do hope that this open letter will have some kind of effect. Now, what effect that might be, I don't know. But it's certainly drawn attention to it. And the proposal for a possible youth world champion or a junior world championship is definitely a very interesting concept. Yeah. As for all the calls for, independent reviews and things like that, definitely, I think that's definitely worthwhile to prevent this from happening in future. I'm going to put something out there. Now, this could be controversial, and you can say, oh, Rab, you're tap dancing on the landmine here. This is historic for many different reasons. This open letter that has been signed by some of the biggest names in the piping game will definitely have an impact. However, we've spoken about this on the show before. To affect change in the world of the RSPBA, you need to raise any such things like this through your branch. Yeah, we've talked about this before. You need to attend branch meetings. You need to propose any such changes to rules, plan requirements, requests for independent reviews, or anything like that. All has to come through at a branch level. Yeah, there is a level of red tape in place, unfortunately, that, many other changes over the years have been suggested and shot down, or suggested and voted through. It's gone through all the proper channels, I guess. You take it to your branch meeting, either the branch supports it or they don't. And if they do support it, then hopefully it makes it through to the headquarters AGM, hopefully. And then if it does make it into those papers, then it gets talked about at the headquarters AGM. And then, if it gets voted through, then bingo, your change gets through, and hey, you've affected change in the piping world. If it doesn't, and it gets voted down, then try again. So this open letter, these are kind of recommendations, I guess, from this working group. And all of which are incredibly interesting. And I have to say, I'm definitely all for. However, I am concerned that the RSPBA themselves, the top brass who work in Washington Street, could potentially look at this letter and completely ignore it. There is that potential. Because there is that mechanism in place. If bands want to affect change, then they need to do it through all of the stuff I just mentioned. All of that red tape. You have to go to your branch meeting. Then you have to get it voted through. Then you go to the AGM. And then you get that voted through. Etc., etc., etc. But I have to say, given the amount of big name people that have signed this letter, And not just the big names for that matter, but the sheer volume of people who have signed this letter. I dare say this will definitely grab the attention of the CEO and the board of directors. This will not go ignored, in my opinion. But whether we will actually get a full-blooded response to it, don't know. I guess we're going to have to wait and see on that front. But as soon as we hear any other further developments on this, we will definitely let you folks know and give you an update on all of this mess. We do think that it's very interesting, though. You know, this open letter, honestly, genuinely is historic. And if you haven't read it yet, I would stress that you go now. It's shared out everywhere across socials. And it's on pipesdrums.com as well. It's been published out far and wide. Everyone can read it in detail. And as far as I'm aware, it has also been shared to the local press because they have been quoting from it in articles that I seen today. I think it was the Courier newspaper I spotted the article. And there's been tons of articles written about this. And yeah, the RSPBA are not being shown in a very positive light here. And they're not showing that they're being very supportive of the youth involved in our competitive band scene. So, do we think it's incumbent on them to do something? Absolutely. As to what that something is, we don't know. But the recommendations that are provided in this open letter, are definitely worthy of the attention. As for the Junior World Championship, that's an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure how to fully unpack that one. That will have big implications, not just for the junior bands, but for everyone else involved in competition for that matter, and might be up for discussion at a full AGM if it does make it through a branch level. Yeah, this situation, folks, it's very complex, it's very murky, and it also is very emotive, as we've mentioned. So I hope in the production of this week's pod that we've managed to hit on some of the salient points. We do know that there's a lot of other nuance around this, and and emotion is very high. I have to say congratulations to our world champions, Scots College in Novice Juvenile B. Fantastic, well done to everyone there, but also full commiserations to everyone at Lochgilly High who were read out as world champions on the day only to have their title stripped, which is just heartbreaking. So to anyone else out there in the bagpiping world that has had experience of this happening, let's face it, at this point there's quite a number of you. I'm sure you have opinions on this. And I dare say we'll receive some further weekly drones on this. So send them in to us. bigrabshow.com, big button at the top of the page, weekly drone. Or you can email us, bigrabshow@gmail.com. And you can let us know your thoughts and opinions on all of this. Over the next few weeks, however, we will not be delving back into all of this drama post-Worlds because, we're going to be kind of shining a positive light on the piping scene for a bit. Next week on the show, we will have our full on-the-ground report from the Friday at the World Championships. And then for those of you keeping score, the next episode after that will be our 400th Big Rab Show! 400. That was all recorded live at Piping Live. And that was such a positive day. And I don't know. The winner that day was the music. It was such a good event. So that'll be episode 400. And that'll be released in the next few weeks. After that, then, we have another World Championship on the ground report. So that'll be day 2. That'll be us running about on the Saturday then. Yep. And then after that, of course, we have the Belfast International Tattoo. Yeah, for those folks out there that have forgotten, it's the Belfast Tattoo that's coming up very soon. Tickets are still available. You can go and grab them if you can. And we'll be doing a full report from the Belfast Tattoo. And we have a bit of a schedule ahead of us over the next 4 to 5 weeks. So we don't envision that we will be delving back into all of this murky water with the drama post-Worlds, unless we have a huge development in the story that, the recommendations from this open letter are being taken seriously. Will we get a response from RSPBA at all? Will we see any changes as a result of this open letter? I don't know, but we'll certainly be following this story with interest. Yeah. So, as I've said, if there's anything that we have glaringly got wrong on this pod, I can only apologise. I have been going on the information in front of me with local media stories and also what's been presented to me by both the bands on their socials, on sources such as bagpipe.news and pipesdrums.com, other sources like that, and I've just presented the story as I see it in front of me. If I am completely wrong, then please do let me know, and we can happily sing Stuff That Rab Got Wrong together. And yeah, I don't know, it's not a laughing matter, and I'm definitely taking this seriously, but yeah, I'm human and I can make errors, I guess. There you are. All right, on such a very highly emotive topic, I think it's time for us to move on. But no doubt we will revisit this again. My advice to anyone listening right now that does want to affect the change that is noted in that letter, please do keep these in mind. Bring that letter with you to your branch meeting. Yeah, raise it at branch level. Insist that this goes through as suggested changes or suggestions up to headquarters. Then your branch can consider it, and every member band there can hopefully back you up and vote it through, and it goes to headquarters, and hey, everything that was on that list can come true, I guess. So, yeah, we will certainly keep across this story, but we don't expect to delve back, as we've mentioned. But, yeah, if you do want to be kept up to date on anything happening to do with all of this mess, then please do keep across the Big Rab Show on our social media. Our Facebook, Twitter, website, all that kind of stuff. We'll do our best to keep you updated as best as possible. All right, folks. That's been a tough podcast to put together, to be honest. There's a very twisted, windy road with this one. And, yeah, I don't think we've reached the end of it just yet. Yeah. So, email us in, bigrabshow@gmail.com. Or you can send us in your own weekly drones, of course, and let us have it. Yeah. Until next week, where we will be on the ground in Glasgow, surrounded by amazing music. We'll see you all on the podcast next week. Until then, all the best. Well, that's it for another Big Rab Show podcast. Thanks so much for downloading this week, and a special thank you to our sponsor, G1 Reeds. Played by bands around the world, they are the champion's choice. Check out g1reeds.com for all of your piping needs. Don't forget to check out thebigrabshow.com to be kept up to date with all of the latest news and views from around the piping world. And also, check us out on Patreon. For $5 a month, you can get your hands on tons of extra piping goodness and be a part of the Patreon faithful. So, until next week, folks, we'll see you right here on the Big Rab Show Podcast. All the best.